What if a trade war could actually boost Bitcoin? Sounds kind of wild, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But it might not be as crazy as it sounds. That's what we're going to dig into today.
Absolutely.
We're talking about President Trump's new tariffs
Right.
on Canada, Mexico, and China,
Yeah.
and how those tariffs are maybe sparking a trade war,
Yeah.
and how the crypto market is reacting to all of it.
Right into the thick of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So to set the scene, President Trump has imposed a 25% tariff on most goods coming from Canada and Mexico, a 10% tariff on energy from Canada, and another 10% on imports from China.
Wow, so he's not holding back.
Not at all.
All right.
The White House is saying this is all about national security and public health.
Interesting. What are they pointing to specifically?
Well, they're talking about fentanyl trafficking and illegal immigration.
Ah, I see. So they're connecting the tariffs to those issues.
Exactly. And, for those who might not be familiar with fentanyl, it's a synthetic opioid that's incredibly potent.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
It's up to 100 times stronger than morphine.
Wow.
And it's become a major public health crisis in recent years.
It's truly tragic how many lives it's claimed.
Absolutely. And the administration is saying that a lot of it is coming across the border illegally.
So that's the justification for the tariffs.
That's what they're claiming.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Canada and Mexico aren't just taking this lying down.
I wouldn't expect them to.
Canada retaliated with their own 25% tariff on $155 billion worth of American goods.
Ooh, that's gotta hurt.
It will. They're targeting things like alcohol and fruit.
Smart choices, hitting industries where it'll be felt.
For sure. And Mexico's President Sheinbaum, well, he didn't mince words.
What did he say?
He called the tariffs slanderous.
Wow.
And he promised that Mexico would also be taking retaliatory measures. Yeah, it's getting tense.
And then there's China.
Right. Huge player in all of this.
They're gearing up for a fight, too. They're promising to file a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization.
So this could drag on for a while.
It could. It really feels like we're on the brink of a full-blown trade war here.
It does, and I think a lot of people are worried about what that means for their wallets.
Absolutely. CTV News has been covering this a lot, and their articles are full of expert predictions about price hikes.
On what kind of things?
Everything. Groceries, clothing, cars, electronics, you name it.
So basically everything we buy could get more expensive.
That's the concern. And some economists are even warning about a potential recession in Canada.
That's scary stuff.
It is. And this isn't the first time we've seen this kind of protectionist approach backfire.
You're talking about the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act.
Exactly.
From back in the 1930s.
Yep, 1930 to be precise. It was passed during the Great Depression, and instead of helping many economists believe, it actually made things worse.
Well, it basically raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods.
Wow.
Which triggered retaliatory tariffs from other countries and basically choked off global trade.
So it was like a domino effect.
Exactly. And it's a stark reminder that trade wars rarely have winners.
Yeah, everyone ends up losing in the end.
And this brings us to a question that I think a lot of our listeners might be asking.
What's that?
Where does crypto fit into all of this?
Good question.
What happens to Bitcoin when the global economy starts to tremble?
Well, we saw an immediate reaction in the crypto market.
Oh, yeah.
Bitcoin actually took a dip following the tariff announcement. It dropped below $100,000 for the first time in almost a week.
So even digital currencies aren't immune to the real-world drama.
It seems not. They're still connected to global events.
Makes sense.
Mm.
But it also makes you wonder, could this actually be good for crypto?
That's where things get really interesting. Yeah, some investors think this kind of economic uncertainty could push more people towards crypto.
Really?
They see it as a potential safe haven asset, a way to protect their wealth from what governments and central banks are doing.
That's an interesting idea. So explain that a little more.
Yeah.
What makes crypto a safe haven?
Well, think about it this way. Traditional safe haven assets like gold
Right.
have always been seen as a store of value during times of economic or political turmoil.
Yeah, because they're scarce,
Yeah.
and their value isn't tied to any one government.
Exactly. And their value isn't directly tied to any specific government or currency.
Right.
Cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin, share some of those same characteristics.
Right.
They have a limited supply, and they operate independently of any central authority.
So the thinking is that if people start losing faith in traditional financial systems,
Right.
they might turn to crypto as an alternative.
That's the idea.
That's a pretty compelling argument.
Yeah.
So are we saying that Trump's trade war could unintentionally spark a crypto revolution?
It's definitely a possibility. And it's not just individual investors who are starting to see the potential of crypto.
Yeah.
BlackRock, one of the world's largest investment firms, has been quietly accumulating Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Wow, BlackRock manages trillions of dollars in assets. They're not just playing around.
Nope. They're seeing Bitcoin and Ethereum not just as speculative investments, but as assets that could play a role in a more diversified portfolio.
So they're taking it seriously.
They are, and that's where we can really start to connect the dots.
Okay, I'm following you.
On one hand, you have this escalating trade war, raising anxieties about economic stability and potentially pushing people to seek alternative assets.
Right.
And on the other hand, you have major institutional players like BlackRock entering the crypto space, lending it legitimacy and driving wider adoption.
So it's like these two seemingly separate storylines are converging.
Exactly.
And it's creating a really interesting moment for crypto.
It is. But of course, not everyone is convinced that crypto is ready to be a true safe haven asset.
Right, there are always different perspectives.
Always.
Like Adam Cochran from Hain Ventures.
Yeah, he's been pretty vocal.
He argues that Bitcoin is still too closely tied to the global markets to be considered a true safe haven.
He makes a valid point. Bitcoin's price can fluctuate wildly, and it's been known to react to major global events, just like we saw with these tariffs.
Right, but then you have voices like Jeff Park from Bitwise Invest.
Yeah, he's more optimistic.
He's expressed a lot of optimism about Bitcoin's long-term prospects.
It's a mixed bag right now.
It is. Some see crypto as a potential life raft in stormy economic seas, while others are still waiting to see if it can truly weather the storm.
That's a great way to put it. And that's what makes this whole situation so fascinating to observe. It's like we're watching a real-time experiment unfold.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
But let's back up for a second and talk about the potential impact of this trade war on, well, everything else.
Okay.
We're talking about the U.S., Canada, Mexico, and China. These are major players in the global economy.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here?
The CTV news articles paint a pretty stark picture. They highlight how deeply intertwined the Canadian and U.S. economies are.
Right, we're practically neighbors.
We're talking billions of dollars in goods and services crossing the border every single day. Disrupting that flow could have a ripple effect on businesses and consumers on both sides.
It's easy to forget how much we rely on global trade in our daily lives.
It is.
What are some specific examples of things that could be affected?
Well, think about the things you buy regularly. Groceries, clothing, electronics, cars.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those products or their components come from these countries.
Yeah, it's true.
If tariffs make those imports more expensive, those costs are likely to be passed down to consumers.
So we can be looking at higher prices at the grocery store, higher prices for clothes, higher prices for just about everything.
It's a real possibility.
What about jobs? Could this lead to job losses?
That's definitely a concern. The CTV news articles quote several economists who are predicting job losses, especially in industries that rely heavily on trade with these countries.
I can see that happening.
And that would have a knock-on effect on the entire economy.
It's a sobering reminder that these trade disputes have real-world consequences for real people. It's not just about abstract economic theories. It's about people's livelihoods and their ability to provide for their families.
You're absolutely right. And that's why it's crucial for everyone to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and what the potential consequences could be.
So where do we go from here? If these tariffs remain in place, and if this trade war keeps escalating, what should people be doing to prepare?
It's tough to say for sure how things will play out. Trade wars are complex, and there are a lot of variables involved. But there are some things people can do to be proactive.
Like what?
Well, first and foremost, stay informed. Pay attention to the news, read articles from reputable sources, and try to understand the different perspectives on the issue.
Okay, don't just rely on social media or sound bites.
Right. Dig a little deeper.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly. And the second thing is to think about your own financial situation.
Okay.
Are you prepared for potential economic uncertainty? Do you have an emergency fund? Are you diversified in your investments?
Those are all really important questions to consider. And I think that's where the conversation about crypto becomes even more relevant.
How so?
If traditional markets become more volatile, could crypto offer a way to hedge against those risks?
That's the big question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer.
Mm-hmm.
Crypto is still a relatively new asset class, and it comes with its own set of risks.
Of course. But it also has the potential for significant rewards. We've seen how Bitcoin has performed over the past decade. Its growth has been astronomical. And now with institutional investors like BlackRock entering the space, it feels like crypto is gaining legitimacy and momentum.
There's no doubt that crypto is becoming a force to be reckoned with. But it's also important to remember that it's still a volatile market.
For sure. But it's a market that's worth paying attention to, especially as these global economic and political tensions continue to play out. Okay, so we've covered a ton today, from Trump's tariffs and a potential trade war to what it all means for the economy and even how crypto fits in.
That's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is, especially with so much information out there and everyone's got an opinion.
It's easy to get lost in the noise.
Exactly. So how do we cut through all that and really make sense of it all?
Well, I think it comes down to developing critical thinking skills.
So not just believing everything we hear.
Exactly. Question those assumptions. Think about different perspectives. Really try to understand the why behind the what.
That makes a lot of sense. So how does that apply to this whole trade war and crypto situation?
Well, take the whole crypto as a safe haven idea. Don't just assume it's a sure thing.
Right.
There are strong arguments on both sides.
Yeah, some experts say it could be a good hedge against economic uncertainty.
Right, and others are saying, hold on, let's see how things play out.
Like Adam Cochran. He's not so sure about Bitcoin being a true safe haven.
Yeah, he thinks it's still too connected to the global markets.
But then you have people like Jeff Park who are way more optimistic about Bitcoin's future.
Exactly. So the key is to look at the evidence, weigh the different arguments, and then come to your own conclusions.
And that means doing your research.
For sure. Read articles from reliable sources, listen to what the experts are saying, maybe even dive into the tech side of how crypto actually works.
You don't have to be a blockchain whiz overnight.
No, not at all. But even a basic understanding can really help you make smarter choices.
This isn't about just going with the hype or blindly following the crowd.
It's about educating yourself, understanding the risks and the potential rewards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that this is a constantly changing landscape.
Oh, absolutely. Crypto is still relatively new and things are moving fast.
So it's not like you can just invest and forget about it.
Nope. You got to stay informed, stay engaged, and be ready to adjust your strategy as the market changes.
So I guess the takeaway here is that whether we're talking about trade wars or crypto,
or anything else that's impacting our world,
we have to be proactive in how we learn and make decisions.
Absolutely. Ask those tough questions. Challenge those assumptions. Don't be afraid to seek out different viewpoints.
The more we understand about what's happening around us,
the better prepared we'll be to navigate the complexities.
It's all about empowering ourselves with knowledge.
And then using that knowledge to make informed choices.
Choices that benefit us, our communities, and the future we're building together.
That's it in a nutshell.
And speaking of empowering ourselves with knowledge, if you want to stay up to date on all things crypto, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on those notifications. Subscribe to Crypto with Jan.